estimated age for the earth, 5 days before Adam. God created heaven and the earth in 6 days. So Adam was created on the sixth day. From Adam to Abraham, we have roughly 2000 years. From Abraham till today, we have 4000 years, and a total of 6000 years. Let's say 6050 or 60. I would say it's less than 6500 years, but definitely not millions of years or billions of years. So secular scientists say that, who are the secular scientists? These are evolutionists. They believe that the earth is 5 billion years and the universe is 15 billion years or 14.5 billion years. Now, the sad thing is most of the Christians, most of the creationists, so-called creationists, borrow this ideology, borrow this billions of years thinking and try to fit it in the Bible. But the biblical creation scientists say that the earth is 6,000 years and the universe, including the stars, is 6,000 years. We believe that God created the heaven and the earth in 6 little days. God created the light and the earth in day 1. He separated the waters above and below on day 2. Day 3, there was dry land and plant. Day 4, sun, moon, and the other planets and stars were created. Day 5, you have birds, and then you have sea creatures. And day 6, there were land animals, and at last God created man in God's own image. Now remember, in evolutionary worldview or evolutionist worldview, you have millions of years. You have millions of years and millions of years of death, suffering, pain, disease. All of it is required for mankind, for man to come into existence. But in creation, it's clear, Bible is clear that it is man's action that brought sin and death into the world. Now, before even Charles Darwin postulated this theory of evolution, or he postulated his book, The Origin of Species, in somewhere in 1858, there were two geologists in 1700s, 1800s. One person called James Hutton and the other person called Charles Lyell. Remember, I was talking about uniformitarianism yesterday. Charles Lyell was the person who was a believer and a proponent of uniformitarianism. Now, Charles Lyell went and investigated the rock layers on the earth. He investigated the Niagara Falls. He investigated the strata, the Grand Canyon, and he came to a conclusion that, hey, the earth cannot be 6,000 years. The earth cannot be 6,000 years or 1,000 or 10,000 years. It should be at least more than 1 lakh years. That's what he said. And ever since that time, the age of the earth has been, by the secularist, kept on increasing, and today we have 4.5 billion years. Now, when this happened, and they were called as the scientists of that time, Charles Lyell and James Hutton, they were saying that Bible cannot be trusted because Bible records that the earth and the universe is 6,000 years. Now, the theologians of that time were not able to give a reasonable argument to these so-called scientists. So what these scientists did is, okay, if you don't have to give up the Bible, you don't have to be concerned about people, whether they are losing faith or not. What I would suggest to you is, why don't you fit this millions of years and billions of years inside the Bible? And the theologians were happy for it because they were worried that many people were, since the scientists were saying that the Bible is getting discredited because the earth is very long, not as what the Bible says, which is very young. So these theologians borrowed these millions of years, and they were thinking where to fit. Now, some of the creationists who believe in millions of years or billions of years believe that there is a genealogy gap from Adam to Jesus. That's not true. This is clearly shown in Luke chapter 3. I don't have to put the scriptures. You can go and read for yourself. Luke chapter 3 speaks precisely about Jesus' lineage from through Mary and through Joseph, tracing all the back to King David, and it is tracing all the back to Adam. Now they were wondering where to fit that millions of years, because there are no gaps in the genealogies. There are no gaps in the genealogies, and Bible is clear about it. The only place to fit this millions of years or billions of years is in the Genesis chapter 1 days of creation. Somewhere between Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, this is called as a gap theory. What is a gap theory? Bible says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was formless and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Now what they do is they take Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, and they divide it and they put billion years of timeline between verse 1 and verse 2. This is called as a gap theory. People who believe in gap theory believe that there is a huge gap of millions of years and billions of years before between Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. Now then there are other group of people called progressive creationists and theistic evolutionists. Progressive creationists are old earth creationists. Theistic evolutionists, I explained to you who they are. Now they believe, progressive creationists or old earth creationists believe that each day is not literal 24 hours. They say that each day is stretched into millions of years or billions of years. Now, I do have slides to refute gap theory and progressive creation or theistic evolution, but because of the constraint of time, I'm not going to show it. But my foundational argument against gap theorists, people who believe in millions of years or billions of years, is this: Genesis has been reinterpreted, saying that Genesis chapter 1 to Genesis chapter 11, it is just poetic. That is called framework hypothesis. That's here. And you call day age theory, where the days in Genesis chapter 1 are a long period of time. There are people who believe in day age theory and theistic evolutionists who believe that God somehow initiated the process of evolution. And this old age creation or old earth creationist believe that the Noah's flood is local, not global. The reason why they believe that it is a local flood is because any global flood will wipe away millions and billions of years of fossil records in the geological column. And then you have progressive creation, which is same as more or less same as the day age theory. They borrow it, saying that Genesis 1 chapter 1 doesn't speak about literal 6-day creation. And then we have gap theory.